Hey, I'm Walt Robillard, and this is the Indie Creator Spotlight. Today we are talking to Charlie McElvy of Zion Studios. Did I get that all right, sir?
Yeah, that's great.
Hey, welcome aboard. We appreciate you having you come out today and talk a little bit about comics, as well as what it's like being an indie comics creator today. I figured we'll get started and just jump right into the pool. Where are you from?
Originally Norfolk, Virginia, so I was born in the Navy Town, USA.
Are you still there, sir?
No, well, I'm in Virginia. I've moved all around and probably, crap, I probably lived in all but about 12 states in my life, but Virginia's home.
Yeah. The Those who follow you pretty vehemently on Facebook and Twitter and some of your other social presences, uh, they see you running around the woods a lot. Can you talk a bit
I bet they do.
running
I
around the woods, getting caught on fire, jumping over flaming hay bales? Would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Oh gosh, I love talking about that. Are you kidding me? It's funny. My wife calls it the best midlife crisis ever. I don't know how. I'm trying to remember exactly how I got started, even. But oh, yeah, I can remember now. It was a couple years ago. A friend of mine from church had invited me out to do a Tough Mudder, and I was like, what the heck, right? So I signed up for it, and lo and behold, we have a hurricane in Virginia, and they canceled the Tough Mudder, and I was like, well, fart. It's like I'm already in the hotel. It's 5 o'clock in the morning. They just now canceled the thing the day of. It was totally last minute, and I was PO'd. So I said, screw it, I'm going to find something to do. And I hopped on Google, and I searched mud runs, and Spartan came up, and I thought, whatever. But before I disregarded it completely, I saw that they had these Spartan workouts, and I thought, wonder what that is. And of course, they had the whole 300 theme and all that other stuff going on. So of course, all the guy in me said, "Ugh!" And sure enough, they had 2 miles from my house. The local gym had one of these Spartan workouts being hosted, and I went. It was a Saturday. It was free. There's probably 80 of us out there. It was 93 degrees by 10 a.m. That day, and we were out there from 0800 until 1300. So those of you who speak English, that'd be 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And I burned, according to my watch, I burned over 7,000 calories, and it was just absurd, and I loved every minute of it. It was brutal, sandbag carries. I didn't have any sandbags, so I had to carry my kids who came with me. So I had 60 pounds on my back. It was great. I was hooked. Immediately went and bought a season pass, and that was it was in June. And there was a race in July in Pennsylvania, and that was my first one up into the Poconos, so Blue Ridge Ski Resort. And I ran that, and it was. I still struggle trying to describe the feeling when I finished, but I told my wife it was primal, because when I finished, I didn't know if I was supposed to laugh, to cry, to scream, to hug someone, punch someone, kiss someone, kill someone, bite their face off, or to buy them flowers. I mean, I had no idea what else to feel. That's how primal it was, and it was just an enormous experience, and I was hooked. So I ran 14 more races that year.
Oh, wow, just in the first year alone.
Well, in the first 6 months, because I bought that season pass in June. The season ended in December. So I ran my last race that year in Dallas, which actually was in Glen Rose, Texas, and I'll never forget it because I packed thinking, this is Dallas. Even in December, I'm banking on 50 degrees. Yeah, I landed in a snowstorm. It sucked. So that's kind of how I got started. That's where I am. So since then, I've moved on into I'm fully competitive now, so I run in the cash waves now, and I've got sponsors that back my. Yeah, there you go. That's one of my favorite races too, Bushido Challenge. That one actually qualified me for the World Championships this season, so I'll actually go to the OCR World Championships in Cincinnati in October, and I think it's the 17th in Cincinnati. So yeah, it's just some of the stuff we get to do. I'm
Rock
actually
on, man. Looks a
coaching my
lot.
daughter right there. Some of those picks, yeah. My 14-year-old daughter runs these things now. She came in first place in her first ever race for her age group. It was terrific.
That's rock and roll, man. That's fantastic. The and so now you're pretty much. I mean, those, like I said, those who have been following you have seen that you have you're involving your whole family in this now.
Yeah, for the most part. My from my 4-year-old on up to my 14-year-old, they all run the races. Either the 14-year-old now runs the adult races alongside me, as you saw, and my everyone from my 9-year-old down to my 4-year-old. She's 10. Sorry, my 10-year-old down to my 4-year-old running the kids races. So they're amped. My 10-year-old actually just asked me a couple weeks ago. She says, "Hey, Daddy, when we do the Battle Frog, can I just run the 5K instead of the kids race?" And the 5K course is one of the adult courses, and I thought, if they'll let you, crap, by all means. So yeah, it's great. It's good family fun and family fitness, and it's togetherness and something to talk about at the dinner table, and it does garner attention. To your point.
Hell yeah, that's fantastic. And so going back to a little bit, going backwards a little bit, when you started talking about the OCR and adventure racing, you used something from my language, and which is military jargon, and then you get if you look throughout something we'll be talking about a little bit later, watch guard number 0. There's a lot of military love in there as well. Do you have military background or military in your family?
I don't. I do get that. Well, my family, yes. Me personally, no. I never served, unfortunately. I did grow up in Norfolk, so exposed to squids everywhere. And my uncle was a squid, so was my grandfather. Got to go on the Kennedy, for a family tour and stuff like that. A lot of fun. So I grew up with a great deal of respect for the military. When I moved out of the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area with my wife of only like a year at the time, we moved to Stafford, Virginia. If anybody knows Virginia geography at all, that's only about a mile south of Quantico, Virginia, which is where the crossroads of the Marine Corps is. So now I'm around a bunch of jarheads instead of squids. So yeah, again, all due respect to those guys, love them dearly, and some of my best friends and some of my teammates on my racing are jarheads. So it's great. I love the Marines, Navy, or military in general. These guys are great. So I'm appreciative of that.
Rock and roll, man. And like you said, if you read some of your stuff, it looks like it's some of those guys have found their way into WatchGuard. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
So you said you came up through Virginia. Were there many comic shops that you had back then?
My first, like many of us old guys, I'm encroaching on 40 here. I bought my first comics, of course, at 7-Eleven or the pharmacy, or sometimes on the Food Lion shelves or whatever, your grocery store shelves. But when I was a kid, the only comic shop I remember actually going to was Trilogy. No, I take that back. I went to Zeno's Comics. I'm not sure if they're still in business. They're out in Portsmouth, Virginia. But Trilogy Comic Shop, there's 3 of them in the Virginia Beach, Norfolk, Chesapeake area. And a good buddy of mine, Jerry Hogan, phenomenal dude, great comic shop owner, and would bend over backwards to get me whatever products I wanted. If I wanted a statue of something, he'd find a way to get it for me. And he was a good friend and a great comic shop owner. And I'll never forget, he through some mutual connections, I got to meet Colleen Duran, and she autographed some Legion of Superheroes stuff for me because I am a huge Legion of Superheroes fan. And through those connections, I actually met Alan Davis and almost had an Alan Davis cover to my book. Talked to Alan on the phone, great guy, but unfortunately scheduling just didn't work out. So alas, I do not have that Alan Davis cover, and I'm going to weep now. So if you'll excuse me. Yeah.
Well, the world is a much smaller place with things like Twitter and Facebook, so I'm sure we can harass somebody into getting you the cover you need.
I still have Alan's number. I might have to just give him a call.
Right on. Did you get into comics early? Have you been a comics fan since you were a kid, and then it progressed, or did you drop in, drop out?
No, honestly, I don't think I've ever let go of comics. If somebody recently, and I don't remember who it was, and forgive me, but one of my friends on Facebook said, "Hey, what was your first comic book? Did you remember buying?" And I thought about it for maybe 2 seconds before it hit me. The cover splashed across my face. It was It was DC Comics presents. I think it's 147. But it's Superman versus He-Man, and I just found out last week when I posted that. I went and did some research on the book and found out it was the first comic book appearance of He-Man ever. But that was the first one I ever owned and bought with my own, hard-earned money, which means somebody gave me $1. So yeah, but that was, gosh, that was I might have been 7, and I've not been a comics fan. Or involved in comics since that time. So 32 years, man. It's been great.
Rock and roll. And when did you decide? Yeah, I got to do this for myself. I have to be the guy telling the stories instead of just the guy reading them.
Wow, loaded question, right? I don't know that I could pinpoint a date. I know, like a lot of fans, right? You sit down with your friends and you draw up comics and you write stories and you don't know what the hell you're doing, but you do it anyway because it's fun. And you think comics is all glitz and glamour, and these guys who write are just they're rock stars, and the guys who draw are super rock stars, and it's just all fun and games. And so through that, but unlike a lot of guys, I don't think that ever ended for me. I thought, you know what? While I realize it's a business, I want to do this because there's stories that I want to tell. And I don't know, I'm trying to think, that really, really hit home probably around 2000 or so. I said, no, 98. There you go. I know exactly when it was because I got a piece of art on my wall here that I'll turn my camera around and show you, that Andy Smith did for me. But I'd written a comic book just before the launch of CrossGen, for those of you who remember CrossGen Comics in the first iteration, not the Marvel buyout. I said, I want to do a book. Battle Chasers had just come out not too long before that, and I had a similar story called The Prophecy. It actually had a longer name. There was The Covenant of Avalon, but Eric Larson of Savage Dragon fame said, yeah, you might want to cut that back and think like a movie, shorten that crap. Today I could probably get away with it, but back then it was different. Yeah, I did that, got 5 pages of artwork, and then Andy got hired by CrossGen. So 98 was really when I dove into this full steam and said, I'm going to produce a comic book. And the rest is history, which I'm sure we'll talk about at some point there.
Now you got a pretty strong presence on sites like Drive-Thru RPG and RPG Now. Did you see that as like a gateway drug to start publishing? I guess what I'm asking is, chicken or the egg? Did the RPGs come first, or did the comics come first?
No, you're right. I did see them as a gateway drug. I wanted to tell the stories, and I thought, nobody's going to care about my book until somebody cares about the book, or the characters, rather. And that's what kind of precipitated all that. I had already done a few things. I was playing around with, I was playing HeroClix, actually. And a few years back, I was designing HeroClix maps, and we were selling them. We were so good at it, we even got a cease and desist letter from WizKids. It was great. So you're successful when the big guys give you a C and D.
You have it framed?
I don't, but I do have the letter, and I still have the FedEx package it came in. It was great. It's just good. Yeah, they were. They complained about every aspect of our stuff, and really what they were complaining about is we had better products. But that notwithstanding, we did that. So that got me into the gaming portion of things, and then I started tweaking around with like the role playing stuff. And because I was going into the local game shop frequently for HeroClix and to see what was going on, I started asking, hey, what's a good superhero RPG? And the guy said, hey, you ever heard of Mutants and Masterminds? I said, I have now. Pulling him into the shelf, and I went and bought gosh, it was V1. So it was the first edition M&M guide. And in fact, I think I still have it on my shelf behind me here, which is kind of the background. Yeah, in fact, you can see I got all my Mutants and Mastermind stuff right up along here, right next to the Marvel Universes. So that's what started that. And I said, man, I'm going to do a couple of these, and I want to get my characters out there. So I put Asa out there, and I put Andy Smith's character Apollo out there, and then I did my Japanese war god Quan-Ti, and from that point, I just stayed with the Mutants and Mastermind stuff, and I thought, I'm going to do my entire story in Mutants and Masterminds. I was hooked on it. I thought it was a cool venue, so to speak, for the characters, and it did exactly what I expected. It got enough people caring about the characters the genre even, because some people who are RPGers aren't necessarily comic book readers. That's not always a two-way street, right? So I found people who are primarily D&D guys who started dabbling with Mutants and Masterminds, saw my stuff, and then started buying comics and so forth. So it's pretty cool, and it worked out really well for me, and I think that really helped us out.
One of the things that I've noticed with your products is that you have a sick level of, and when I say sick, I'm talking like good way slang type sick, not not falling down and barely able to stand.
Yeah.
Right. So I mean, you guys have a very lofty level of production value in what you do. Does that tie into your day job at all?
No. I mean, maybe from a personality or a character perspective, but all that stuff. I have a graphic design degree, so I mean that was where I really went to school for, is graphic design. But because of the passion for comics and because of my attention to detail, and because of the great team that I have in these books, I mean honestly, I'm just a facilitator in a lot of ways. But the guys who have worked on the Watchguard source book, and please go through, and if you haven't, go look at some of the names. Everybody's got a bio sheet in the back of the book, just a little snippet and a web link to each one of their pieces. It's the guys who I hired, the guys we put together. I can't remember who said it, but the statement that the best leaders are the ones who have the best people around them, who aren't necessarily the ones who are leading everybody, but they're pulling the right people together. And I thought that's the kind of person I want to be. And I remember that was a statement I remember from being as a kid. So I kind of lived that motto, and I thought, if I'm not going to do it really, really well, I'm just not going to do it. So I wanted to do the best possible work feasible, and from a budget standpoint, practical. So, and I did that. I did really well.
You have this. I was a backer on the Kickstarter for the WatchGuard Teen Force 5.
Thank you.
Hey, rock and roll, man. I saw some of the visuals, and that brought me in. But one of the things that grabbed me and hooked me was that you could buy in at a tier where you could get your physical rewards, your digital rewards, but also there was a special digital reward that I really wanted, which was the Handbook of the WatchGuard Universe, the WatchGuard source book. Can you tell us how that came together and what kind of an impact that's had on not only your writing, but also as a reference for you going forward?
Yeah, that was when I decided I was going to do something in the Mutants and Masterminds 2.0 when it just launched. I said I want to do something more than just convert my existing characters, and at the time I only had 3 or 4. I want to do something more than just convert them over to version 2.0. I want to put out a whole crap ton of characters. I want you guys to see my universe, feel the universe, know who these guys are, see the city, which you see the map on screen there, know where they live, what the town is kind of like. I wanted a kind of a holistic implementation of this. I didn't want to just drop a bunch of characters out there. I wanted to introduce you to this world, to this universe. So the WGU, this is the entryway into the WGU. And so the WatchGuard universe lives and dies around this source book. Now, but that also means that it's an organism too, so it grows. And literally, not literally, but we've died. Wow. Quick side note. For my kids, we think the word kill, like I'm going to kill you, is such a harsh thing. We started teaching them to say, I'm going to die you. And it's actually funny. So, but the problem is as you just heard, I actually adopt it sometimes in my normal language, so I got to be careful about that. So not that we will die you, but we will kill characters, and I've done that. Much to many people's chagrin. One of the favorites, Jupiter, she's dead. And Walt, I think it's you actually that.
Yeah, it's true. I'm a fanboy. yeah, I am a fanboy, and I was just like, I'm sitting there and I'm looking, I'm like, deceased? Oh, come on.
Yeah, and I've killed some characters since then too. And right now, dead is dead in WatchGuard. But the good news about Jupiter, though, on that note, is she's part of the Teen Force 5, which is a predecessor to the WatchGuard in the history. So, there's an infinite number of stories to be told between her, her kind of comeuppance as a character and then her death. So the good news is you can see plenty of her if we can get that book off the ground there. But you had asked about the source book. Yeah, that was just that was a big goal. I wanted to get all the characters out there, at the time, all of the characters that I had out there. It's a broad and diverse cast of characters, heroes and villains alike, almost in even numbers. And I also wanted to make sure that we had good adventures to launch with. So D.T. Butchino, Sketch from Sketchpad Studios, he wrote a few of most of the campaigns in the book. And then I had several artists contribute pin-up work and other things. So I just wanted to give a good. I wanted the first big deal from WatchGuard to be a big deal, and so the source book services a lot of entry points for the fans, but for me, like you said, it's kind of my Bible too, because when my brain goes, oh yeah, you killed that guy, I can look back and go, how? I don't remember how the hell I killed him, and I had to go back and flip through and realize that, oh yeah, he did die and it was a meteor smashed on his skull or whatever it was. And there's no spoilers there because that actually didn't happen to anybody. I'm just making this crap up now as I go. But the point is it serves as a good Bible, and every time I introduce a new character, they just, in my digital file, I just drop them right in.
Nice. Are we going to see an expanded and revised edition of the source book anytime soon?
Yeah, probably.
Wow, that's a lot of squirming going on.
I know. I guess I don't want to make promises I can't keep, but on the one side, many who are listening, watching, have seen the Superiors, which is my Canadian super force, already out there. You've already seen Seven Ronin, and you've even seen the Rise of Regent characters, my cosmic characters, coming out there. So in one sense, that's a native expansion, or of the source book, even though they're kind of supplementary source books in and of themselves. What I'm doing right now with Superiors is I'm actually writing their history now, and I'm going to put together their home base. I have a designer that I'm looking at to develop the base and give a good graphical representation of that. You don't need a map of Canada because everybody's got a map of Canada. It's real. So I'll just tell you roughly where it's located, and since it's secret, it's really rough. And then you'll see the base. But more importantly, people understand the history, and a lot of people wonder why I have a Canadian force with a French name based in Manitoba. Granted, they speak French there too, but they're centered out of Quebec. That will come to light when I give you guys the background on this, so just be patient. I know some Canadians and some non-Canadians are like, what the hell are you doing? That's stupid. It's not. It actually makes sense. So there's some political things there. So hopefully that'll be fun for you guys to kind of play with when it comes to the games and scenarios that you play with it. So we'll see. So yeah, it's expanding in that way, and I will. My goal is to put together kind of a compendium ultimately when I finish Rise of Regent releases, Seven Ronin releases, and the Superiors, which I have one more release for those guys. Then I'll start wrapping all that stuff together and make a big compendium. And I want to do it hardcover. We'll see what costs look like for that. But that's my goal. And I'll for Kickstarter backers, I'll give a special discount too. So more to come on that.
Right on. Now, where did your Japanese Renegades come from? What prompted that coming in?
Yeah, I don't know. I was sitting down one day. Well, so I kind of know, right? I was watching Last Samurai with my son. His favorite movie. He loves that movie. And I think it's a terrific movie, and I hate Tom Cruise. So I mean, really, it's like, I don't know. It could have been any better movie without him. It was really a good flick, and he and I were talking about that, and that kind of went away. But later that week, I was talking to someone about the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. If you remember the back in the '80s, which is now on DVD for like $8. If you don't have it, go pick it up. There was a ranger that shot lightning arrows, and he had his drawstring was lightning too. And I thought, man, it's just always been such a cool visual. I don't think it was ever done well enough, even in the cartoon. But it's just such a cool visual thought. And then we had a Liefeld conversation one day. We were laughing about the lack of drawstrings, and then the kind of anachronistic, response by him was, well, it's magnetic, and that's why there's no drawstrings. And it's like, okay, fine. And maybe that's the answer. I don't know. Anyway, all that to say is that kind of, it's like chemistry. You start getting a bunch of crap together, and you end up with something else. So that's where the first one, Stryker, came from. And I thought, oh, how he would look so wicked if it was a Japanese martial art kind of character. And yes, Big Trouble in Little China did absolutely have some influence on me when I came up with these guys. I'm not gonna lie. So yeah, Sean Isaacs from The Stray, the artist for The Stray, actually worked with me, and we came up with the designs together, and he did a bang-up job. I mean, they're gorgeous. If you've seen them, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen them, go to Drive-Thru RPG or RPG Now and check it out, because they're great characters. They look phenomenal.
And so, rounding out your RPG line, so we have the Watchguard, we have the Superior, we have Ronin. What could we expect to see next?
Probably, I really want to wrap up the Rise of Regent supplement. I started that one actually before Superiors and before the Ronin, but nonetheless, it was one of those ones that I want to do it right, and I was originally planning on doing it as a smaller version of the Watchguard sourcebook. It was going to have alien races, which are still coming, but a diagram of the galaxy. It was going to have the history. It was going to have all the characters, of course, and then a couple of gaming modules, supplement type kind of lead-in stories to get people going, and maybe even some pen-up art. So again, like the Watchguard sourcebook, but just a little smaller scale, maybe only 10 or so characters, maybe a dozen or so characters, as opposed to 44. But that kind of got put on the back burner. I had a couple other things that came up, and not the least of which was getting the Canadian characters out there. I love that guy. Just the look of that character. You can hate how I wrote him. That's fine. I will not be offended, because just buy it for the art. I mean, it's just freaking beautiful, isn't he?
It's a gorgeous design. It really is.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to ask you, how did you come about the name of your studio?
Oh my gosh, that's opening a can of worms. I worked at CompUSA as a kid, and there's a buddy of mine, Jason Kimball, another artist. I say another artist. I am a graphic designer. Jason actually helped design this shirt. I've done logo work. I recently did some logo work for nutrition bars. I've done graphic design for all kinds of stuff, but I'm not an artist. Most of the characters I designed or co-designed graphically, but I'm not a comic book guy. You don't want me drawing. But Jason's great. Jason can draw. Jason can design. He was kind of my mentor in Illustrator when I was first playing with it 20 years ago. Holy crap. Anyway, at the time, the Palm Trio had just came out. Now, you'll have to Google that if you're younger than 30. The Palm Trio was the first 16-bit color handheld. It's what we would call a PDA, it was called PDAs then too, but it was our mobile experience, but it was not really a phone. It was anyway. We thought, the Trio. The Trio was a phone. The Prism was what I was referring to in my head. And Handspring came up with the Prism, and that company got bought by Palm. Anyway, we thought there's got to be a better way to do a PDA. Compaq had something called an iPack out there, and we saw all the different models, and every one of them was great in their own way, but none of them are perfect. And we thought, what if Apple came up with one? Funny enough. So the iPhone, our idea. Thank you very much. I will take a bow.
And you'd like to take a percentage?
I'd love to take a percent. Hey, a 0.5% would be totally fine for me on global sales. Apple, if you're listening, Cook, you're a great guy, right, buddy? Anyway, so we designed a handheld, and we were real detailed on it. We knew what components were going to be in it. We knew how it was going to operate. It was going to be a Linux-based OS with a GUI. It was right. I know, right? I'm a Unix guy. What can I say? Which is another reason I use military time, 24-hour clock. And we had the look. It had a nice curve. Man, I wish I had the design with me right here. I've got it in my notebook. I just don't have it near me. Anyway, we came up with it was what was the name of the darn thing? It was the Xeon. It was the Savant. Because it was smarter than everything else, it was richer than everything else, it was feature rich, it was awesomer than everything else. It was the Savant, and our design company was Xeon, and that's where that came from. And we just kept it. It kind of just gravitated over, and we started doing graphic design work. The Zion Studios logo came up, and we have a Zion Games logo that I used to use for my RPG stuff when we were doing the clicks maps that we got the C&D for, that we had to stop making. So, yeah, so it stuck. It's just, and it'll never go away. And it was something to do with the Matrix. We had, because the city was Zion, and I didn't want it to be too obvious, so we made it an X instead of Z. I don't know. We were stupid kids. What do we know? But it works.
Well, you were stupid kids that designed one of the first handhelds.
We actually submitted to Apple, by the way.
Oh, did you? Did you get a response?
We did. They said thanks, but no thanks. It was actually from Phil Schiller. If you guys remember, if anybody remembers Phil Schiller from Apple, Phil wrote a letter back, signed it personally. I still have that letter too, and said, thanks, but no thanks. They weren't planning on getting to that market anytime soon. The Newton was the last chance of that, and they were looking in other directions, was the answer I got. So.
And then iPod. Yeah, right.
We were ahead of our time. That's all I'm going to say.
Now, we recently saw your first release, WatchGuard Zero, hit Comixology. Why don't we track backwards, and where did the WatchGuard come from, and tell us about how that leads into the Kickstarter.
Yeah, well, the WatchGuard, it came from years of wanting to do my own comics, like we already talked about. And while my original comic was more of a battle, I'll just say battle chasers, because it's really, rather than try to describe it any better way, it works, right? Science, technology, coexist with magic. It was cool and fun. But that genre had already, that ship had sailed on that genre several years ago, and I thought, with a few exceptions like Darklands and other things, there really weren't any great books out there around that genre, and I thought, why bother right now? Let's get back to the heart of what I've always enjoyed, and that's superhero comic books. And so that's where WatchGuard came from. The first release, the first character of that was Voyager, the shirt that I'm wearing. And it was a character I designed, and he was, to me, he had the mystery background of a Wolverine. No one really knows, even him, knows where he comes from. He had the kind of the presence of a Superman. When he landed somewhere or where he was around, everybody knew who he was. But he also had kind of a Reed Richards vibe to him, because he is supremely intelligent. He can build anything just given enough time. Like Forge, if you guys remember Forge from the X-Men days, very similar to that power construct. But he also has some super strength and other things. So he was this, oh man, I really hate saying this because it's going to sound like a rip, but Tom Strong, if you guys know that, he's kind of that scientific adventurer, but he was much more willing to stay in the background. He wasn't excited about being the forefront. And so, yeah, there's Voyager. Beautiful graphic by Kevin Sharp, which, for those of you who are Kickstarter backers or who are Team Force 5 fans, the guy who drew that is the guy who's drawing the Team Force 5 comic book, so you know what kind of quality work and line work you're going to see on this, if you're not familiar with Kevin's work otherwise. But yeah, he at some point decided to just retire being a hero and wanted to just do scientific work. And there's some tragic things around that I haven't released yet, so we'll get there someday. But he was the heart and soul of the team, and but I needed a military leader. For me, to your point earlier, I really loved the military. I love I don't know, it's cool. Modern day heroes, right, in real life. And so Sentinel was born out of that. Incidentally, he was created about 6 months before President Obama won his first term, and I thought, oh great, I've got a mixed hero, and now we got a mixed president, and everybody's going to think, oh yeah, he's built off Obama. He's not. Not that that's a bad thing, but he's just not, okay. So, but nobody said anything. So yeah, he's a former Marine, former Secret Service. He's of mixed heritage, and he was my first kind of diversifier. I wanted him to be the first one that led off into a lot of ethnic diversity in my group, and then just naturally that characters pop up as they did in my head from stories. So that led into WatchGuard. Writing the story, the backstory to WatchGuard for the source book, really kind of created the visual for me, if you will, for what the comic book should be. And while I originally envisioned the comic being 48 pages, I realized I had more than one story to tell, and the other one was the Teen Force 5 one, so I cut it back to 24. So I made that kind of the zero issue, and I cut out a lot of it. So it's hopefully it's a good. I mean, people seem to like it on Comixology. It's got a 10 5-star reviews. And not a lot of reviews, but I'm excited about every one of them. So thank you for those of you who have rated it. So people are liking it, but it's definitely a kind of a shell of the full story that I wanted to tell. So there's more coming.
Oh, my microphone was slippery there for a second. First of all, I want to say that yeah, Tailgater and his crew they're a bunch of punks. So yeah, there's that said. But yeah, it seems like in that zero issue, you know, you have a lot of exposition in the first few pages, and then what really caught me about the issue was that you had exposition and you were telling story while they were in the midst of this big fight. Can you tell us a little bit about the process that led to that?
Yeah, it was probably the hardest thing because there's so much, you know, as a creator, and anyone who's written a book or comics or anything, you know, there's so much story, so much stuff you want to tell, so many things happening, and on a movie, well, yeah, I mean, unlike a movie, you have these other tools, you know, caption boxes, and you have relationships that you can build up that you're not limited to 2 hours. I mean, you've got really an unlimited time zone or time slot to introduce and to do these relationships, so long as you're producing books. But in this one, you know, I wasn't sure if it would be the only book I'd ever do. And I've got to get as much information and backstory and tie-ins and hooks together as I can while it's going along. That was a balancing act, and I did several rewrites, and I had some good friends who read it, who I trust, Vito Del Sante being one of them, who read it and shot me back feedback. You know, I had some concerns about a couple things here and there that I said, and or that the characters said. You can never blame a writer for what the characters say. Truman Capote said that. So whatever the characters say, it's their problem, not the writers. But there's a couple things I edited there, and there's a couple of suggestions that came out. And the biggest thing that I wanted to make sure was consistent, that every page was the last panel made you want to turn the next page. And that was a lesson I learned from Eric Larson. He suggested that in my first book, and Mike Barron, who was the first professional to ever read any of my scripts, that was a big thing for them. So it stuck with me, and that's a challenge too. So I think I answered the question.
Yeah, you got it. It's a very pristine book. It's a very visually stunning book, especially your first appearance with Sentinel donning his costume, and the villain crew that comes in and smashes in. You know, their first entrance, very grand, very big. How much leeway did you give your artist to, and who was your artist, and how much leeway did you give him to say, tight script, stick with what I got, or splash your goodness all over the page?
Excuse me. No, great question. Yeah, it is. I totally agree. It's a gorgeous book. Again, if you don't like my writing, who cares? Just look at the book. It's freaking gorgeous. Andy Smith did all of the line art. He did pencils and inks. Andy is an industry veteran. If you don't know his name, shame on you. He recently wrapped up a run on DC Comics Earth 2. But Andy and I have known each other since '97, so we've known each other for a long, long time. In fact, I knew Andy before he had any children, and I know his daughter. Gosh, his daughter's going like middle school now, so we've aged a lot, but we've remained friends. Along that way, we've established a relationship, and Andy knows how I write, and he knows that he likes tight scripts because he doesn't want me to kind of make him do reworks all the time and stuff, which happens in some script formats. So we do the DC Comics format where I write a full script, and I'll even give panel descriptions and numbers of panels per page that I expect. But the good thing is that while I write a super tight script and I'm really clear about, is this an extreme close-up? Is this, are we zooming back, zooming out? What should be in the background? What kind of things do we need? What little trinkets do we want to drop in there as teasers for something else later? And there is one in there. Those kinds of things I write in the script. But he also knows, because we're friends, that he's not limited by that. Like that, it's like having I don't know. It's like having a short fence for the artist. So I gave him, he's got acreage on which to work, but it's just a short fence. If he needs to hop it for any reason, he's got full license to do so, and he's not hurting anybody by doing that. And so Andy knows that, but he also is very judicious about it. He'll call me or text me and say, "Hey, I'm not really liking the flow of this panel with the rest of the page. Do you mind if I do this?" And I go, "Oh yeah, crap, you're the visual storyteller, so I'm going off the best I can, but I'm not the artist." And so we'll go back and forth, and we'll make some modifications. And that page you just showed, actually, we had 3 versions of, and we settled on the one that Andy, the third one he did, which he said was his personal favorite, and I agreed completely, and that's what made it the final print.
Yeah, like you said, there's some gorgeous art in this book. What made you decide to go the route of Kickstarter?
Frankly, it was a shot in the dark. I'd seen a lot of comic book guys. Joe Martino, actually, I had become friends with him, supporting his Kickstarters for Titan, and just through Twitter and other things, we became friends, and Facebook and so forth. Again, social media is wonderful. And anyway, he suggested to do a Kickstarter, and I thought, yeah, I've been leaning towards it because everybody's doing a Kickstarter, and for comics, it seems like, and I thought that's a great way to go. I had some finances set aside to do the book myself. A lot of it was from the sales of the WatchGuard source book and the various releases since then, as well as shirts and other merchandise that we've sold. And I do conventions, so we sell stuff I sell stuff at the conventions. It's great. It's been really good. So I had an audience. That was great. That also meant I had potential backers, and because I knew I had an existing audience, I tried the Kickstarter. Now, I actually did 2 Kickstarters. One actually fell short, just short. But the difference in the 2 was, one, I waited before relaunching to actually continue to build up the momentum. But that was really it. I mean, the Kickstarter served 2 purposes. One, it's a broadcast advert, right? It's an opportunity to capture the attention of people who may not have ever heard of you or may not come across your stuff on RPG Now because they're not gamers. But on the other side of it, those people who really like the game and are comic book fans are likely to invest in it and back it. And that's exactly what happened. And so the second time around, it was successful, and I think because of those factors. I was a little bit more mature in my thinking about it, too. I think I approached it a little better. But that's why. So Kickstarter served several functions, not the least of which was a big marketing vehicle.
And the decision to bundle Teen Force 5, was that made to kind of add value to the Kickstarter, or was that another story that you felt was a good companion piece to what you were already going to release?
More's the latter. I honestly, I had a story to tell that I couldn't get out. I had to get out of me. It was one of those. It was like, I don't know. It was like an itch. You just got to scratch. And so that I mentioned earlier that I cut WatchGuard down to 24 pages from the original 48. That was because it was self-imposed, right? It was self-wound, if you will. I figured I gotta freaking tell this story. And you know what? I want to do a flip book. I still think flip books are freaking cool. And DC almost proved it. They had a huge, was 2 years ago, last year. I didn't buy it, unfortunately, but they had a huge success with their flip book with Green Lantern and I think Red Lantern. And they were just like you expect. One covers Red Lantern, one covers Green Lantern, and the story cuts halfway through, and you flip it over and you start the other one. That's what I wanted to do. But I was talked out of it by Image Comics publisher Eric Stevenson. I'd already announced it was going to be that format in the Kickstarter, and I was going to stick with that had we gone to publish with Image. I was bound and determined to stick with that. But Eric Stevenson, via email communication, decided, he told me that it's probably a good idea to get rid of that. Nobody buys flip books. They're just not a popular format. And one-shots are hard enough to sell. He said, you're shooting yourself in the foot to do a one-shot that's a flip book. He said, and frankly, we're just not going to do it. And I said, okay, how about 2 one-shots? And he said, nah, no thanks. So We did lose the opportunity to get Image, despite the fact that I had some history there with Larson and a couple other guys, and Stevenson himself. They really want ongoings or a series of mini-series. So we'll see. There's other publishers out there, and we're looking at doing that. And who knows? Maybe I'll do my flip book one day as a special giveaway or as a 10-year anniversary celebration or something sexy like that. I don't know. Whatever. I mean, it's just I don't
My wallet's already open, so you just let me know.
know. I appreciate that.
Yeah, man. What's next for the WatchGuard universe? What is it more? Are we going more RPG publishing front right now, or are you got something primed and ready to go with your finger on the trigger for comics?
Yes, to both. I'm going to keep doing RPG stuff, and several reasons. One, it has proven itself to be a great platform to launch new characters, to gauge the interest and the temperature of the audience. So in one sense, it's almost like field testing stuff before it gets out there. But it's not throwaway. This is stuff that we want to do. I want to do. I'm hoping everybody else will buy into it. It seems to be very successful. Every character I've released has a great sales volume. They always spike immediately, and they stay in the top of their class for sales. So that's good. So I want to keep the RPG stuff going. Oh, and by the way, those guys are so loyal. There's no chance. I don't participate in the Atomic Think Tank a lot anymore. I just don't have time. I used to, but I still go on there every once in a while and just kind of troll, not troll, but what are people saying about WatchGuard? What are they saying about Team Force 5 or Zion Studios? And they're still talking about us. And good or bad, that's great, in my opinion. And yeah, I've seen people, complain about all kinds of nonsense, from costume design to too many pouches, which, by the way, I think is the silliest. I have one character that I can think of that has a lot of pouches, and it's not Liefeld-esh. He has like 4, so and they're all on his belt, but whatever, and they're functional. But anyway, but the gaming crew, I mean, that audience is so loyal. There's no chance I'm going to relent on that. On the other side of things, comics is where my heart has been with this thing, and so while WatchGuard's always first and foremost a comic book entity, it is absolutely. Hang on one sec. I forgot to turn off my text here on my phone, on my computer. While WatchGuard's a comic book entity first and foremost, it will live in the RPG world for as long as there are superhero RPGs.
Where are we going to be going in the comics vein? Are we going to see another issue of WatchGuard and possibly see that ongoing? Or I know Teen Force 5 is coming.
Well, great. Oh, let's start with that. So let's start with the Teen Force 5, because that's part of the Kickstarter, and I want to make sure that the backers who are watching this or listening, yourself included, I did post an update today. Most of you probably already saw it. Teen Force 5 is still in process. It's still coming. It's still part of your rewards. You guys will get that. I may, if I do the flip book, I may do it for Kickstarter backers only and never publish it again. We'll see. But once I get all the pages penciled and inked from Kevin and from Diana, the pencil and inker, respectively, we'll get them colored. It may be the same colors who did WatchGuard, Elmer Santos, who just wrapped up some Batman, by the way. Kudos to him. I will proudly say that WatchGuard was his first full interior work. Thank you very much. Again, we have launched another career, and I'll take all the credit in the world for that, even though it probably has nothing to do with me. But joking aside, Elmer did a great job. He learned a lot as he went. Andy was a great coach and art director and kind of helped clean up some of that stuff. Proved the point. Elmer's out doing Batman now, which is great. If he's available to color Teen Force 5, either he or Eddie Swan, who's another great colorist we've used in the past, and another guy I love, he's an Aussie. Either one of those guys will be coloring it for us, so that'll happen. As soon as I get the pencils and inks, man, you guys are going to get scans of pictures and all kinds of cool, fun stuff to look at, and then it'll be colored as quickly as possible and produced. So you'll have the digital one hopefully very, 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 very soon. But it all depends on when I get the line art. So that's the point on Teen Force 5, and for now we're going to leave that as a one-off. Teen Force 5 number 0 is going to sit. There are more stories to tell on Teen Force 5, to my point earlier when I was talking about Jupiter. But right now I've got about 3 story arcs that I want to tell with WatchGuard, and it may, if things work out, the way I hope. It will be an ongoing. At the worst, it'll be a series of miniseries, but ideally it'll be an ongoing. So that's the goal, is to make it ongoing. And if we can get a publisher to back that, to support that and to publish it for us, it'd be great. So that's what we're looking at.
That's fantastic news because except for rare occasions right now, the big companies are really losing their allure for guys like me, and it's guys like you that are doing these smaller stories, but are doing them well. You
Thanks.
guys are pulling us toward you, and your gravity is more heavy and dragging us in because you're telling stories that are about the characters and where they come from, what they want to do, and how they want to apply what's happened to them, versus just another reboot, relaunch, retcon stuff that's going on right now. And that's part of the reason that I'm doing this podcast, is because while the big companies have a lot of presence and noise and can get the word out, sometimes the smaller groups just need that one little shout out and give people that experience with what they're doing, especially with something like WatchGuard, where when you pick it up, you don't know what to expect, but yet when you read it, you're like, wow, this is fantastic. So yeah, rock and roll, man. You're doing some definitely good stuff.
Hopefully we can keep that reaction for everybody going on for a long time.
It's really a quality book, so I can't be happier with it. It's really fantastic. And speaking to that, from a guy who did and went through the process of Comixology Submit, can you talk a little bit about that, the problems, pitfalls, or even some of the good stuff that's happened with it?
Coincidentally, I was actually in an email chat with. We emailed back and forth with John Roberts, the founder and CEO of Comixology, just today. John had some questions about other avenues, other venues that do digital publishing and so forth, and even print on demand. So it was pretty cool to chat with him. I got to say, that's a very supportive group. Comixology Submit is it's actually probably one of the more painless submission processes that I've been through. It may be because I've learned a lot, and also I'm technically savvy, so I understood what the technical requirements were and so on and so forth. But I think it was honestly very, very simple. And I got emails from their technical crew with like there was one page that had, for whatever reason, I must have accidentally sent up the wrong file. One page they said that just derezzed so bad that it just wouldn't look good, and I go, oh crap, well, and I got to go back, and they were really, really good about screening it, so it was a good process. Are there downsides to it? Yeah, the one downside to it, and I was asking John about this today, is you don't exactly get a sales report on an ongoing basis. Like I'm used to, for example, with RPG Now and Drive Through Stuff and Drive Through Comics and those guys. I can go at any point, log into my publisher account, and run a sales report for any window of whether it's like from January 1st, 2000 to today, and get a full detailed report. I can run by product, I can run whatever. You don't get that. I will say you don't get that with Comixology Submit, and I did recommend maybe at some point they look at some mechanism to allow us to see what our current sales are, or a date of sale. Like again from this window, this day to this day, this little window of time. That may come. You do get a report when the quarter ends. They have a 45-day post-quarter close, and they pay. That's when you get your sales report. So, it's cool. It's really cool. But again, very, very. The process is very simple. There might be things you don't like about, like I said, the limitations of what you can see and the visibility you have to your product. But honestly, they're just a great bunch of guys. John's a phenomenal guy and very approachable. And I thought this is great, and it's a great vehicle. It's everywhere. It's every platform, right? Every mobile device. It's Android and it's Windows. It's Mac and it's iOS, which is almost the same thing anymore. I don't know if it's on Windows Mobile, but whatever. It's in the vast majority of people's hands, and it's really cool. So I like it. I'm a big fan, and I'll continue to use it unless I go with a publisher, like if Dark Horse or something picks me up and says, hey, we're going to publish your comic, and I go, great. Well, they have their own. I think they use iVerse Media. So whatever. If I have a choice, I'll use Comixology.
Nice. And if you had any advice to give to somebody who's starting out and who wants to pen their own comics, whether it be a a writer or artist, English is not my first language. So, what would you say to them as far as like a singular piece of wisdom that you've learned from the journey so far?
Is this a PG or PG-13 audience? I'm just curious.
Oh man, I don't care.
Uh,
Throw it down.
just don't be an ass. That's my number one advice: is don't be an ass. When you go up and present your portfolio or you submit your writing to someone to look at, be willing to take the criticism. Especially if you're willing to actually show somebody, then you better be willing to accept the criticism. Otherwise, don't show them, because otherwise you're just showing off. So be judicious. Go out there. Look, when I first started writing, I wrote to Mike Barron and J. Michael Straczynski. Both read my script. Both replied. They were very, very kind. Now, Barron said, hey, the dialogue is like clunk, 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 clunkety, clunkety, clunk. And I go, that hurts, right? It hurts to see that. I like Barron. I like his work. I respect him. And the first thing you want to do is be defensive and go, but really the answer is don't do that. He said it because that's what he felt. And if he felt that, then somebody else is going to feel that. Or maybe hundreds or thousands of others are going to think that. And so I went back and I learned to listen for dialogue, and I tried to be a better. When I script now, I try to have an internal conversation now, as opposed to just forcing these characters to say certain things. So it's almost like role playing in that sense, where you put yourself in this position. What would you say if you were that person? That's the other thing, right? It was being able to step in someone else's shoes. Writing, writer and artist, same thing. You just be willing to accept the criticism, and you don't have to like it. I don't expect you to. But shut up and adopt what they say and listen to these guys, because you went to them because you, I assume, respect their and value their opinion. Act that way. That's all I got to say.
You were just talking about you have that internal monologue. Do you ever drag your kids into the office and be like, look, you got to act this out with me to see if it sounds right?
No, but I do listen to my kids a lot. My kids are funny as hell, and so my 4-year-old, if you watch me on Facebook, my personal Facebook page, I post her comments all the time because she's a loon, man. I have never met a kid that's that funny at this age. So honestly, I steal their lines is what I do. They write better than I ever will.
So we might end up with the McElvy family sounding out the next Axe Cop.
I love that comic book, or at least Volume 1. I haven't read any of the others. Yeah, that's who knows. My son would love to write comic books, that's for sure.
Now, if folks wanted to stalk you on the internet, and assume that's something that you feel comfortable with, where can they find you on the internet?
I'm on Facebook. Actually, WatchGuard, the WatchGuard official fan page, Zion Studios, Teen Force 5. Those are all pages that I manage, and I'm fairly active on them when they have activity to be had. WatchGuard more so than the others right now. Zion's kind of the general holding spot because I also do graphic design work still. And if you want to follow me for my athletic stuff, I actually have an athlete page too, so you can go find me there. It's facebook.com/CharlieOCR. I'm sorry, OCR Charlie. O as in obstacle, C as in course, and R as in racing, and then Charlie with an IE, not EY. That's how the girls spell it. At least that's what I'll say, and somebody will punch me later. But those are two good places to catch me. Any of those places are good to catch me. Twitter. WatchGuard again has at WatchGuard Comic is the WatchGuard one. At Charlie McElvy is me. That's mostly my sports, nutrition, health, whatever stuff. But I also have writing crap on there and everything else. So that's kind of my general me page. And then at Charlie McElvy is Instagram. That's mostly fitness related, and lots of pictures of me shirtless, and much to everybody's chagrin. And where else am I? And of course, here on Google, so you guys can catch me here, obviously, in Google+. That's kind of it. So, I mean, I'm all over social media. I don't do a Tumblr. I don't blog a lot anymore. And I don't do Imgur. I do watch DeviantArt. I have a DeviantArt page, but I haven't posted anything forever. It just gets kind of tedious because I'm not an artist. So yeah, grab me anywhere, follow me anywhere, and you're welcome to follow my personal family, my personal page on Facebook. But if I don't know you, I probably won't friend you. I've already got 1,200 and something on there. A lot of people I still don't know. I'd rather keep my family life a little bit more private, so I do keep some of that stuff down.
Rock and roll, man. We're gonna put the address for WatchGuard number 0 on Comixology on the in the show notes at the bottom of the page, as well as links to your page on Drive-Thru and One Bookshelf, so people can check out your RPG stuff as well. I really want to thank you for coming out today.
Thanks for having me.
If you don't mind, I'd like to consider this a part 1 because it just sounds like there's more here that we could be talking. So
always more, man. Always.
Awesome, really awesome. So I'm Walt. I'm the head ink monkey over at Hazard Studio, and this has been the Indie Creator Spotlight with Charlie McElvy of Zion Studios. And Charlie, thanks again for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again for having me, Walt. Take care, man.
All right, and we are out.